Please like, share, and subscribe for more. Love, Against All Odds, the untold journey of Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo. In a world obsessed with perfection, fairy tale endings and social media gloss, real love, flawed, bruised, and resilient, often goes unnoticed. But sometimes behind the curtains of celebrity, beyond the fan-made montages and tabloid whispers, there unfold a love story so raw and profound. It reminds us that even stars bleed. That story, unexpectedly, belongs to two of Korea's most iconic actors, Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo. They came from different generations of stardom, carried their own shadows, and lived entire lifetimes in the public eye. And yet, somehow, against the backdrop of rumors, heartbreaks, and unrelenting pressure, they chose each other, not because it was easy, but because they believed love was still worth fighting for. Long before their names were ever romantically linked, Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo were each navigating their own personal storms. Lee Min-ho, forever etched in public memory as the charismatic Gu Jun-pyo from Boys Over Flowers, rose to fame early. His life became a carousel of fame, expectations, and relentless scrutiny. On the surface, he was a golden boy, towering, handsome, and magnetic. But underneath, there lived a young man who had learned the hard way how isolating fame could be. "It's strange," he once said in an old interview, "to be so visible to the world, and yet feel invisible to the people closest to you." Meanwhile, Song Hye-kyo was already a legend. With a career spanning over 2 decades, she was beloved not only for her roles in Autumn in My Heart and Descendants of the Sun, but also for her grace amid personal turmoil. A high-profile divorce had left her vulnerable, her privacy shattered. And while she never spoke ill of anyone, her eyes told stories her lips never dared. Behind her elegance was a woman who had learned how to rebuild herself again and again. They were 2 stars in different orbits, each bearing wounds time couldn't fully heal. But as fate would have it, their paths were destined to intersect. It was a quiet evening in an industry charity gala in early 2024. Both were in attendance, seated at the same round table by sheer coincidence. The setting was unassuming. No red carpet, no flashing cameras, just music, candlelight, and conversations. They had met before, of course. Brief hellos, polite smiles at award shows. But this time was different. I remember she looked tired, but beautiful. Lee Min-ho later recounted. There was a softness in her that made me want to protect her, but also a strength that intimidated me. Song Hye-kyo's recollection was equally poignant. He didn't speak much at first, but when he finally did, he asked, "Are you happy?" It wasn't small talk. It was real. That one question sparked a 2-hour conversation that neither of them saw coming. They talked about everything: love, regrets, fame, fear, and most importantly, loneliness. That night, something shifted. No sparks, no flirtation, just understanding. Their friendship grew slowly, carefully. Late night calls, secret walks in Han River parks with baseball caps and hoodies, shared books, songs sent via text. It wasn't grand, it was gentle. They found comfort in each other's silences. It was a love that didn't demand words. It asked only for presence. But being together wasn't easy. The industry buzzed with rumors the moment they were spotted together in New York. Fans were divided. Their age gap became a conversation point. Critics called it a publicity stunt. Former lovers resurfaced in headlines. Every old scar was picked open, every misstep magnified. I remember telling him, "Maybe it's not worth it." Song Hye-kyo admitted in an emotional 2025 interview. Not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't want to be the reason he suffered. But Lee Min-ho's response was simple. "Then let me choose you. Let me decide what's worth it." And he did, over and over again. There were nights when the paparazzi followed them for hours, when their families expressed concern, when management teams advised them to stay low, or worse, break up, when public opinion turned cold. But instead of running, they faced it all together. Lee Min-ho once showed up to Song Hye-kyo's set after a particularly cruel online rumor. He didn't say anything, just wrapped a scarf around her and held her hand in front of everyone. That moment went viral, but not for scandal, for its honesty. You can't hide love like that, one fan wrote on Weibo. It was written in their fingertips. Their love wasn't loud, but it was loud enough to shake the world quietly. Loving each other didn't mean they stopped hurting. They argued. They triggered each other's old wounds. Sometimes they retreat into silence. Trauma has a way of resurfacing even in love. But they didn't run. He never walked away, Song Hye-kyo said. Not once. Even when I tried to push him away, he waited. Lee Min-ho explained it like this. She wasn't broken. She was healing. And I wasn't there to fix her. I was there to walk with her. Love, they learned, was not about erasing pain. It was about carrying it together. They didn't seek perfection. They chose presence. By mid-2025, they had stopped hiding. No grand announcement. No joint statement. Just moments. Lee Min-ho holding Song Hye-kyo's umbrella at a film premiere. Song Hye-kyo bringing homemade lunch to his set. Matching bracelets. A subtle Instagram post of the same skyline from two different phones. When a fan once shouted, "Are you two in love?" at the airport, Lee Min-ho simply smiled and said, "Always." They never confirmed a wedding, never paraded their love. But those who saw them together knew this wasn't a phase. This was home. In an era where love is often filtered, curated, and sold for clicks, Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo gave us something else entirely. Real love, raw love, love that hurts, but heals. They showed us that the most beautiful love stories are not written in fireworks, but in the way someone stays when everything falls apart. In the way two people, broken in their own ways, choose to stand together. Because love isn't about never fighting. It's about fighting for each other. Not even the harshest spotlight could dim what they've found in the dark. Final word, a love that teaches us all. We often think of stars as untouchable, as icons rather than humans. But Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo's story is not just about celebrity. It's about you, me, all of us. It's about how love asks for vulnerability, for sacrifice, for trust. It reminds us that even when the world is screaming at you to walk away, the right person will whisper, "Let's stay." And sometimes that whisper is louder than anything else. And so, Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo didn't just fall in love. They rose in love. Together, through pain, through storms, through everything. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Two worlds, one ache, the wounds that led them together, before the smiles, before the hand-holding airport sightings and the whispered rumors of late-night rendezvous. There were two souls walking parallel paths, carrying the same ache, yet unaware of each other's pain. The beauty of Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo's story isn't just in how they loved each other, but in how they lived through pain separately, before ever finding each other. This is where their story really begins. From the outside, Lee Min-ho seemed to live a life straight from the dramas he led. Iconic, magnetic, effortless. But behind the global fame, he often stood alone in a room full of people. In the years following Boys Over Flowers, every smile he gave to fans masked sleepless nights. After a car accident in 2006 left him injured and bedridden for months, he faced his mortality at just 19. "It changed me," he once said. "I realize how fragile everything is. Your body, your success, even your dreams." The accident left not only physical scars, but a fear that never fully left him. He learned to work through pain, to smile through pressure. He gave the world his best takes, but few knew what it took to show up every day. His relationships were brief, publicized, and criticized. After each one, he grew more careful. Walls went up. Fewer people were let in. "He carried fame like a burden," said a close friend. He smiled for the world, but when the cameras were off, sometimes he just sat in silence. There's one moment that sticks out, a late night during filming The King, Eternal Monarch. Lee Min-ho had just finished a difficult scene. Alone in his trailer, with rain pattering on the windows, he replayed an old voicemail from someone he used to love. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just sat there, eyes closed, letting the ache wash over him. He didn't need saving, but he needed someone who would understand the difference between the man on screen and the man off it. Song Hye-kyo, on the other hand, was no stranger to love, loss, and the weight of reinvention. Her career was legendary. Autumn My Heart, Full House, Descendants of the Sun. But her personal life often mirrored the tragic heroine she played. When her marriage ended in a public divorce, the media fed off her silence. Headlines swirled, speculations flooded timelines, and yet she never once lashed out. She mourned privately, said a longtime stylist, but you could feel it in the way she moved. Slower, quieter. Her pain was elegant but deep. In 2022, while filming The Glory, her most intense role to date, Song Hye-kyo channeled every unspoken hurt into her performance. She was electric on screen, controlled rage, quiet suffering, the ache of someone who had loved too much, lost too hard. But off camera, she often sat by herself. Her laughter was rare, her trust rarer. Once, she was asked what love meant to her now. She paused and whispered, "Love is a war, and sometimes you come home alone." Even with the world praising her, she had begun to believe that the kind of love she once dreamed of, quiet, honest, unwavering, might no longer be hers to claim. But life, it seems, had other plans. The irony was poetic. Two megastars, both living under constant public attention, both wounded by past loves, both believing that perhaps they had already had their one great love, and lost it. They often attended the same events, walked past each other at functions, smiled politely across rooms. But nothing ever stuck. Timing was never kind. Then came that gala night in early 2024. It was supposed to be routine, another black tie event, another charity dinner with forced smiles and recycled pleasantries. But fate doesn't work on schedules. Lee Min-ho noticed her first, not in the dazzling designer gown, but in the way she absently rubbed her wrist, as if remembering an old pain. She looked beautiful, yes, but also distant, fragile, real. He approached her during a break in speeches, casually offering her a glass of sparkling water. She accepted it with a soft smile. What followed was a conversation that changed everything. No flirting, no glitz, just two people talking about loneliness. Song Hye-kyo later shared, "He didn't try to impress me. He just listened." After the gala, they walked outside, just the two of them, unnoticed under the streetlights. It was a quiet soul night. Not many words were spoken. As they stood by her car, Lee Min-ho gently said, "I think we both know what it's like to go home and feel like no one truly knows you." Song Hye-kyo didn't respond, but her eyes welled up not out of sadness, but recognition. It was the first time in years she felt seen, not as Korea's queen of melodrama, not as a tabloid headline, but as a woman who had been hurting, healing, and holding it all together. That night, she texted him just one word, "Thank you." He replied, "You don't have to be strong with me." And that was the beginning. Before there was love, there was understanding. They met not in extravagance, but in vulnerability. They shared stories at 2 a.m., swapped books with highlighted quotes, sent each other voice notes instead of emojis. They didn't fall fast, but they fell deep. They didn't need grand declarations. A simple glance across a room now held more weight than 1,000 love letters. Lee Min-ho once brought her a bouquet, not of roses, but of wildflowers, with a note that said, "You don't need to be perfect to be beautiful." Song Hye-kyo once showed up on his set during a tough filming week, not to bring fanfare, but soup. Love grew not in dramatic moments, but in the pauses in between. Before they were together, they were two people learning to breathe again. In each other, they didn't find perfection. They found space, safety, a place to finally be themselves. And that is where the real story begins. Not with a kiss, not with confession, but with a shared silence that meant everything.